What's good? It's Woog. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you love music like I do. Beach House just announced that they're releasing a new album called Once, Twice, Melody. This is coming out on February 18th, 2022, and they're also launching a long tour. They've just released four new songs, and they're gonna have 4 different installments of releases leading up to the actual release of the album, kind of as incremental teasers about a month apart from each other. And when I hear Beach House is back, I tend to rejoice. This is one of the more just colorful, blissful, enchanting bands that you could think of. One of my favorite bands of the past, I'd say 15 to 20 years, no doubt. They've released up to this point a total of 7 albums, so this new Once, Twice Melody album will be their 8th. Their debut was back in 2006. It was a self-titled album, Beach House, which actually featured a song, Master of None, that Aziz Ansari and Lena Waithe used for the TV show that started in 2015 called Master of None as its opening theme song. So again, Aziz Ansari's TV show, Master of None, uses Beach House's 2006 song, Master of None, as its intro. And, you know, Beach House's second album, Devotion, is probably even better than that debut self-titled Beach House album. But it's really that 2010 album, and more specifically a song, Zebra, that kind of represented a turning point for the band, their exposure and their overall reputation. I mean, the first 2 minutes alone of the song Zebra gives you not only a crash course into Beach House, but it's really a crash course of the very best that the dream pop genre has to offer. In fact, this is one of the best sounds that dream pop and its nearest neighbor, bliss pop, has to offer. And let's start off with the voice. Victoria Legrand, I mean, she comes into these songs sounding like a true empress. Man, she's amazing. Saying that there's like an androgyny in her tone doesn't even begin to do the majesty of the voice justice. I mean, certain music personas are kind of able to do that. It sounds quite divine. You know, Brittany Howard of Alabama Shakes, different voice and use of it, but it's the same type of thing where you're looking up and around like, whoa, like you're kind of surrounded in this engulfing universe that the person's voice is able to kind of reel you in with. And couple that voice with the production. I mean, Beach House is pretty much a 2-person crew, and they bring in other members to kind of round out their album sound. And you know, this upcoming album, Once, Twice, Melody, is going to be the first Beach House album that's entirely produced by the band Beach House itself. But yeah, look no further than Zebra, Teen Dreams album opener, the first like 2 minutes of that song, but you're going to want to hear the whole song when you hear the first 2 minutes. 2010, if you want to hear Victoria Legrand deliver that type of magic. But the otherworldliness doesn't stop there, because on Teen Dreams' very next song, just after Zebra, Silver Soul, it's arguably just as enchanting. Different sound, instrumentally, but it's just as haunting. Like halfway into the song, the Empress herself, Victoria Legrand, is singing the phrase, "It's happening again," a few times, and your soul is like, what? What's happening? Just the way that she's able to hold on to certain vowel sounds mixed with like whatever reverbish effect is being applied to her voice delicately. It's not like a just total washing out of the voice, morphing it into something else. Like the voice is that special alone, so it's delicately applied. I mean, this stuff could rock your world. Again, Silver Soul, which follows up Zebra from 2010's Teen Dream, equally magical. The instrumental of Silver Soul was even used or sampled on Kendrick Lamar's Money Trees from his Good Kid, Mad City 2012 classic album. Just listen to how that beat, produced by DJ Dahi, hits on the very first second of the track. You know you're in for a very interesting song. J-Rock, by the way, one of the featured verses, or the featured verse along with Kendrick Lamar, really killed his last verse too. Just like, it's a great verse. But the album that those 2 Beach House songs are on, Teen Dream, is like exhibit A of how powerful and intergalactical a dream pop, bliss pop album can feel. It's unbelievable. Like, two of my other favorite beach house songs from that album are Norway and Walk in the Park. And that 2010 Teen Dream album, along with its follow-up, Bloom 2012, those two albums, to me and to most, represent the beach house band at their absolute best. I, till this day, don't know for certain which of those two albums I prefer. In fact, the top 4 or 5 songs from each of those albums can pretty much stand up next to just about any top 5 songs from any of the indie and indie subgenre albums, which might also kind of depict what could be the one Achilles heel of the band's consistency, I think. Like, even like their 2 best albums, I feel, are substantially better in the first half of the album than in the second half. Not that they don't have really good material in the second half of the albums, but I just feel like their albums, those 2 albums specifically, are very top heavy with, I mean, the albums are short. They're like 10 songs. And, the first 5, I think, are better than like the second 5. But Bloom, that 2012 follow-up to Teen Dream, opens with a song called Myth that actually might be my favorite beach house song. Period. When this Bloom album dropped, I heard Myth, that album opener, and it felt like Zebra, Teen Dream's album opener, but Zebra like 2.0. The instrumentation was ridiculously beautiful and breathtaking. Legrand comes in with the vocals sounding fully charged. Like, seriously, it's like her voice was being massaged by angels and demons in between albums, and then they turned it into a fireball and just threw it back at the listener on this song Myth. My cousin PT, after listening to Bloom, essentially said to me, "Woog, they sound like stars just bursting and exploding in space." Seriously, Bloom's, I'd say, first 4 songs are something that you just gotta hear. But we had a good laugh trying to describe how amazing this sounded nearly a decade ago. Damn. The track 4 from Bloom as well, The Hours, another one of my favorite beach house songs. Just the way that guitar bends, like on the hook, or I'm sorry, just after the hook, right before the enchanting voice of Victoria Legrand re-enters the song. I mean, The Hours instrumentally, just a beautiful thing. Like, if I were to try to describe just the instrumental sounds, I feel like, one of the early influences in terms of what kind of sounds like some of the Plush instrumentation for beach house, it would be like some of Pink Floyd's more dreamy, pillowy, Breathe, like in the beginning of Dark Side of the Moon type of instrumentals. It's just swooning and just waves of sound. And, Cocteau Twins, from the 80s, late 80s into the 90s, their, Cherry Colored Funk single, and maybe even that whole Heaven in Las Vegas album, or Heaven or Las Vegas album, and the Cocteau Twins singer, Elizabeth Fraser, better known as Liz Fraser, kind of, has some of that, Victoria Legrand quality as well. I would say Enya. Enya is another artist that, when I hear beach house, I'm like, damn, some of this stuff sounds, as like majestic, like some of the Enya sound. Vocally for Legrand, maybe a little Nico, the female vocalist who featured on the debut Velvet Underground album, Velvet Underground and Nico, the one with the Andy Warhol banana on the cover. Listen to Female Fatale or All Tomorrow's Parties from the Velvet Underground and Nico, and you'll hear that vocalist that I'm referring to, or listen to some of her, solo work, like her song These Days. But yeah, beach house, totally powerful sound. They kind of went on a hiatus after that 2012 Bloom album. They returned in 2015, dropped 2 albums in that one year, 2015. It was Depression Cherry and Thank Your Lucky Stars. And I almost felt like these kind of sounded like a victory lap, or like they could have, I don't know. It just didn't capture me the same way that Teen Dream and Bloom did. I mean, maybe if that was your intro to beach house, it could have been just as magical, but having already heard those 2 albums and then, their couple of albums prior to those, these two didn't sound like their best work, but they weren't bad by any stretch. In fact, like Space Song from Depression Cherry has emerged as like a Spotify favorite. Like, it's cool to see that song boosted on a lot of these playlists. I think it's like even Beach House's #1 popular song on Spotify in terms of listens, theoretically making it Beach House's most popular song. Again, that's Space Song from 2015's Depression Cherry. I'm actually going to go revisit those two albums now that a few years have passed since like their initial release and when I was first listening to them. So they dropped those two 2015 albums after, again, being on a 3-year hiatus. And then 3 years later, they dropped their 7th album titled 7. And to me, this was one of the first like major departures of the sound that kind of lifted them into, indie prominence, we'll say, pitchfork prominence. 7 kind of had more of a shoegazy sound, especially on that intro track called Dark Spring. And what I mean by more of a shoegazy sound, which is its own like subgenre, but it's kind of a wall of sound, but it's a different wall of sound than their dream poppy or bliss poppy wall of sound, where that one is more, keyboard based, synthetic, and this shoegazy one is more so just the crunchiness and the washing out of the guitars, creating a guitarish wall of sound. Listen to Dark Spring. It's a different intro track than like Myth. Not as light. There's not as much levity in it. It's a little bit heavier, a little bit darker. Now, this 7 album had some dream pop moments in it, like Drunk in LA. I thought that was more that vintage beach house sound. But, I like 7, and I might have even liked 7 more than those two 2015 albums. Still didn't love it as much as Teen Dream or Bloom. But it was an interesting chapter of Beach House's evolution. So when I think of what is to come on this upcoming new Beach House album, Once, Twice, Melody, I'm thinking like, where could they really take it from here? So, I gave those few tracks a listen, the 4 that they just released while announcing this upcoming album and their big 2022 tour. And, I wasn't blown away. I gotta say, it felt like they were kind of like coming into the pack, into a more typical sound. And, what I think happens with a lot of these bands is, and I'm going to release future videos on just like the average, career trajectory, like the typical career trajectory or life cycle of a band. But, when they dropped Teen Dream, that's now like 11 years ago. So, the game is influenced by your sound, that they start to try to catch up to that and then start to do new things to it, to where the sound of the times start to change, where if you stick with what made you famous during your initial rise, it could kind of be not old hat, but yeah, I mean, to a degree, old hat 10 years later. So I'm not saying that they have been surpassed by these new artists, but upon first listen or first couple listens of these 4 new songs, like, it sounded a little boring by Beach House standards. There was one that I really liked. I think it was like called Superstar. That was probably the one that I liked the most out of the 4, and the one that I liked the least out of the 4 was the title track, Once, Twice, Melody. I hope that's not like a bad sign. And one thing that I'm also noticing upon this press release for this upcoming album is this album looks like it's got a ton of songs on it. Like, most of the Beach House albums have about like 10 songs. This one has 18 songs. So I'm thinking like, what the hell are they going to do with this album? Like, how are they going to fill up all this time? I think it's supposed to be like 84 minutes of runtime on this Once, Twice, Melody album. Like, that's basically double their average album length. So I'm like, I mean, what is this going to be like a The Wall, if you're Pink Floyd, like a concept album type of deal? What are they going to do with this? So I'm very curious to hear how their sound is going to continue to evolve as they roll out the songs and eventually release this new Once, Twice, Melody album. But yeah, please let me know what you think of Beach House. Are you a fan? If you are a fan, which album or songs drew you in? Now, on their upcoming tour, they're going to be performing in LA at the Greek. So I'm definitely going to try to get the pre-sales to that. I certainly want to see Beach House. I saw Beach House, first time, and one of the 2 times I saw Beach House was at Coachella. I think this was Coachella 2010. the year that Jay-Z headlined. And at this time, Beach House was like in one of the smaller tents. So me and some family, we really got to enjoy Beach House on a smaller stage. And then the second time I saw Beach House was almost 10 years later. This is probably like 2019, 2018, something like that. And it was them opening for Fleet Foxes. So by the time I saw them the second time, their career was at a much different juncture than it was when I saw them in 2010 at Coachella. But yeah, I really want to get these tickets for this upcoming tour. Can't wait for the album. Again, anytime I hear anything new from Beach House is coming out or just came out, it's a reason to rejoice. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on Beach House. Leave your comments in the comments. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you love music like I do. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.